Good afternoon. It is Saturday, January the 30th, 2021. I'm Leon Davis, and you're listening to Altitude Adjustment. It's a weekly podcast about people, politics, and professions. And we appreciate you being here. I want to thank you very much. We have a really special show going on for you today. Today, we're going to talk about reconciling the filibuster. So some people may be familiar with the filibuster, but we're going to try to examine the filibuster and its use and misuse. A couple of things that I wanted to mention beforehand is, one thing. So I listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't get an opportunity to watch a lot of television because I'm putting the show together and I'm listening to podcasts. I think podcasts are a great way to get information. It's a change in the dynamic of how information is being transmitted people to people, and the public and the national conversation is taking place in a lot of small areas and small instances, and we're one of those, and we appreciate you allowing us to be able to help provide insight and information. So right now we're going to get into our podcast for the day. This program is intended for mature audiences only. Altitude adjustment may contain language, images, or other content that some may find offensive. Your discretion is advised. Welcome to Altitude Adjustment. All righty, everybody. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Excellent. One of the things I know we're going to talk about the filibuster today, but one of the things that so for this particular conversation, Leonard is going to take the lead on this, and then we're going to support him on giving our views about the filibuster and what we've come up with our own research on the issue. But one of the issue that I wanted to talk about, and I only want to take about 5 minutes on this, but I know it's an emotional topic, and it's something I don't want to gloss over. And over the past week or so, there has been this situation of Robinhood, which is an online brokerage. And the situation occurred with social media interacting with the financial world. And that this has been a very interesting, for me, topic that has come up. I found a link where they talked with the CEO of Robinhood, and they tried to hold his feet to the fire. And I don't want to say too much about the clip because I don't want to influence your decision. I want you to have an opportunity to see the clip and determine for yourself what you are looking at. But the clip is very good. It's it doesn't contain too much technical data as far as dealing with investing and things like that. So it's something that the professional and the non-professional can get something out of. And I'm going to include that clip with the description of the podcast. So if you get a chance to find the podcast on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook, or any of the audio resources such as Spotify, iTunes, or whatever, go and watch this clip. So I'm going to give my co-host a quick chance to make some comments that they feel that they would like to say about that topic before we move on into the next one. Anybody want to start?
Well, yeah. Well, with what happened with that, the way as I was listening to podcasts and different news shows on YouTube, everybody's hollering because it was just the regular people on Reddit. There was a investment community on Reddit that decided that they would go against.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you so that we can make it brief. Assume at this point that people know they've heard about it, and I just wanted you to give your opinion of what you thought about what happened.
I think it's hypocrisy. As long as the big banks and the big institutions were trading and betting stocks down and they were making money on it, it was okay. But when a bunch of regular investors finally figured out the rigged game of Wall Street and learned how to make it work for them, now we got problems. Now we want to come in and we want to change up all the rules, SEC investigations and all that other stuff.
Okay, Warren, did you have something?
Yeah, what I think is really ironic about the situation is that Robinhood, okay, I'm a Robinhood client myself. I have a few dollars in Robinhood. Nothing big. I'm just a little guy. Probably a lot smaller than the Reddit crew, but they were created to represent the small investor, people that were new, people that didn't have a lot of money to invest but wanted to try to get their share of the wealth. And what happened was, from all outward appearances,
I understand all that. What was your take on? I mean, I understand.
Okay.
So you're going back into the history of it. You're explaining the whole issue, and so I'm just.
My opinion is that it seems like they stepped in on behalf of the big guy, the corporate players, instead of the little guy. And I think it seems a little hypocritical, but that's just my opinion.
So I understand, from what all that I've read, there were questions that I had that I was concerned that things weren't quite kosher on both sides of the issue. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing Congress do some investigations and get involved in trading and the securities industry. And I think that that's going to be key to making the playing field level for everybody. Alrighty, so Leonard, we're going to talk about the filibuster. It's your show.
All right. Thank you, Warren and Leon. Thanks for the opportunity. Glad y'all with us. And anyone listening to the podcast. Now, I titled the show Reconciling the Filibuster because, especially in the Senate, it's not about just voting and passing legislation. We've taken a couple of things, budget reconciliation and the filibuster, as a way to block legislation and pass legislation without really doing an up or down vote. First, we're going to talk about the filibuster, which was done. The history of it was kind of started back in the 1830s, 1840s, made popular by a senator from South Carolina, Calhoun. And all it was is that a legislature get up and he talks and he holds the floor to prevent a vote on a piece of legislation. And it was designed, in theory, to give minority opinions a voice on legislation. Minorities being political minorities and not necessarily racial or ethnic minorities. Because back during the 1960s, the Dixiecrats, which were Democrats that end up going to the Republican Party from the South, they used the filibuster to halt civil rights legislation and to halt anti-discrimination laws. And the longest filibuster in history was done by Strom Thurmond of South Carolina. And I'm trying to remember the correct thing. It was 25 hours and 18 minutes that he stood there, and you just had to hold the floor. And then they came up with this super majority where you can't just have 51 votes to pass legislation in the Senate. You got to have 60 votes to pass it. So if you can't get 60 votes, there's no choice. That legislation is dead. And when we talk about budget reconciliation, It was passed by Congress during the Nixon White House in July of 1974, where Nixon had decided that any money not spent, or if he wanted to, he could just impound funds after Congress decide where they spent. Well, to try to save himself from his own impeachment and having to resign, he resigned his office in August of 1974. And what he signed in the law to keep him from impounding the funds to try to save his behind in his job became the budget reconciliation, which is a way to get around a filibuster. But it can only be related to the federal government budget. It can be used one time during the budget year, or if you never pass the budget, or if it wasn't used before, you get 2 times. Like Joe Biden has it now. He can get 2 bites at the apple this year in 2021. The Senate parliamentarian has to agree that what you want to use the budget reconciliation for is related to the federal government budget. And so in the last Congress, under the previous president, the Republicans used budget reconciliation to pass the tax cuts for the wealthy. Mm-hmm. And it was, the parliamentarian said it's related to the federal budget, tax cuts. And so Joe Biden, of 2 of his top 4 priorities, they're related to the budget. So he could probably get those through using reconciliation, but you won't get anything else through. Because even with the vice president voting, the best the Democrats will get is a 51 to 50. Okay. So that's what I mean by reconciling the filibuster. So we're using budget reconciliation and we're using a filibuster. So we got one way to pass some legislation in the Senate, and then we got this way to just hold it up and stop it. All together stop. So tell me, guys, what do y'all think of these 2 concepts?
All righty, I'll start.
Go ahead.
Warren's gonna. You can go ahead if you want.
Oh no, you go ahead.
Okay, so when you proposed the idea of talking about a reconciliation or the filibuster, the thing that came to my mind is that it was a ploy used by some people to hold up or control legislation. Now, we as a democratic society believe in the concept that majority rules. If most people want something, then they at least get some movement on that, and the minority, while we try to consider their position, they've been voted out, or they've been voted down, or they don't have as much influence in the decision as they would like. So what the filibuster does, and one of the things that you mentioned was the reason for the filibuster was to allow the minority party, because it's about party lines, it's about a political strategy. It allows the minority to then exercise an outsized or oversized influence in how government operates and functions. So what happens then is that a vocal minority can then hold hostage legislation that the majority of people want. And that does damage to the concept of democracy. Now, so we've got that supermajority. And so one of the questions was 60 votes to pass legislation seems counter to majority rule. So if you've got 51 votes out of 101 votes, majority rules. So the filibuster, you talked about, and we're kind of mixing topics here, but you're talking about reconciliation, and that's reconciliation is where you have to. So filibuster allows you to, in the course of discussing any issue, not just any legislation, not just the budget. It may be immigration. It may be military issues. You can use the filibuster for anything. Now, reconciliation is tied specifically to the budget, to money and spending, which is Congress's purview. That's their responsibility as outlined in the Constitution.
Right.
So the fact that we call 60 a supermajority, and that is a threshold that is even included anywhere, is counter to democracy. Wouldn't that be the case? I mean, if there's 101 of us and 51 of us vote for something, shouldn't that be the threshold?
Well, it should be, if you want to say the simple majority is most democratic. Moving it up to the super majority is taking it to a whole new level and making something different out of it. So I think that kind of defeats the original intent of majority rules.
Yeah, when we talk about this supermajority, it's nowhere in the Constitution. It wasn't in the Federalist Papers. And if you read notes from the Constitutional Convention, which I was privy to do in my constitutional law class in college, it wasn't mentioned. So that's something that the bodies ruled on and was voted on later. Like I said, Nixon signed, like the reconciliation law. It's a way to break a filibuster, but it's only related to the budget. And you can only do it through the budget one time. So that's one time a year. So technically we were supposed to set a budget every year.
Right.
And just talking about the record. During the time that Dwight Eisenhower was president, in his terms as president, he got filibustered twice. Barack Obama got filibustered more than 500 times, 6 out of his 8 years of president.
No, well, let me. Can I interrupt you a second, real quick, with a fact?
Go ahead.
Because you're talking about that. From my research, the 4 times I get my research said the 4 times that the filibuster was used by Republicans. I mean reconciliation. I'm sorry, reconciliation.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 times reconciliation was used. Let me go back. Because I need to find my document here because I'm mixing topics, and I want to make sure that I don't do that.
Okay.
So you go ahead and talk. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Do you finish your?
Warren, did you finish your last? When you were giving an opinion about the thing, did you finish up?
Yeah, I go ahead and finish the point you wanted to make.
Okay, so in thinking that we were supposed to be a democratic republic, the House operates that way, but the Senate refuses to. And I was looking at the speech that Mitch McConnell, who's the Republican leader in the Senate, said, "Oh yes, he called himself the Grim Reaper of stuff. And he's been known to let stuff sit on his desk. He's famous for not giving things their votes. Like Mary Garland, who's the current nominee for the U.S. Attorney General, he was one of Barack Obama's picks for the Supreme Court. And they filibustered and wouldn't give him his hearing. And that was by Mitch McConnell. Now, when they finally took over the Congress, the Senate, specifically under President Trump, the Republicans changed the rule, because it used to be you could filibuster nominations to the court. They changed the rule that you just need a simple majority now, and they ramrodded a whole bunch of justices through. And like one reporter said, the Democrats have got to learn the Republicans are playing the politics for keeps, and the Democrats got to quit. You know, if they want some of their stuff, they're gonna have to play it for keeps like the Republicans did. But you know, that's here nor there. But just, you know, you have this filibuster, and it goes against everything we said that our democracy was supposed to be. And when you look at it, the fact that it was used a lot during the 60s to try to prevent civil rights legislation, mainly by the South. And then, you know, I look at the telltale signs, how things just come back to pass. Well, how did we get budget reconciliation? Under another president who was under impeachment, Nixon. And, you know, we got Trump under his second impeachment now. He has been impeached. As I tell people, impeachment is just bringing the charges.
Right.
Now, can you remove him from office? The Republicans are never going to allow that to happen. He's not going to be removed from office. So it's, you can go through it for show. And that's what the old-fashioned filibuster was, where the politician get up and he talks. It's grandstanding, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's just, can you wait it out? Can you wait them out? And, you know, they showed tape of Ted Cruz doing a filibuster, the Republican senator from Texas, reading Green Eggs and Ham from Sam I Am. And, you know, we got serious business that need to be handled by a nation. And this knucklehead wants to read children's stories. They show Rand Paul, who's another Republican that loves to use a filibuster, show him about to choke on a piece of candy while he's doing his filibuster, want to eat candy. I mean, let's get back to doing the people's business.
Okay, so can I interrupt you real quick? So Jimmy Olsen, I'm using the name that's placed in the chat. Jimmy Olsen asks for thoughts on Candace Owens. So if we have time at the end of the show, I will open the floor, and if anybody wants to make comments about Candace Owens, we'll do it at that time, but that'll be towards the end. But thank you very much for that question, Mr. Jimmy Olsen. I'm sorry, hope I didn't throw you off your track there. So, you know, were you finished?
Yeah, I was about finishing up, so I was going to try to get some input now from you two.
Okay, so for me, through the years, such as in any organization, there are going to be majorities and minorities. The minorities are always going to try to find ways to increase their power against the majority. So we are, and when you're in the minority group, you feel put upon when you don't get your way. When instance after instance, you're voted back, or you're not heard, or it doesn't seem that you're heard. And so democracy at that point seems to be the problem. So the minority is going to see that democracy is the problem. They're not going to say democracy is the problem, because if they say democracy is the problem, then we go to authoritarianism. And then under democracy, at least they get a chance to say something. Whether they get to implement anything or not is irrelevant, but at least they get to say something. Under authoritarianism, then they just become protests and they get squashed. So the problem I see is that when the minority is always going to try to find ways to tweak the system, because democracy of itself is designed for input from all sides. It's designed for the minority to at least have a voice and influence the proceedings. But what happens is, when they get a little bit of power, when they become part of a majority, let's say they find an issue that they become part of the majority in, they realize that eventually they're going to go back to being part of a minority. So if you get a Republican Congress or a Democratic Congress and a Democratic Senate and a Democratic presidency, and you realize that eventually you're going to go back to being the minority in the Senate and the minority in the House and lose the presidency, you're going to try to put in back doors that allow you to at least stop the gears from rolling, so that you don't get steamrolled when you're not in the majority. So the filibuster, reconciliation, and there are other things in the government machinery that's been implemented simply as a way to be able to stop the gears when I absolutely strongly disagree with something. Now, everything has its benefits and its drawbacks. Okay. So the filibuster, while it clogs the gears of Congress right now, let's assume that Donald Trump didn't get impeached. That Donald Trump,
he didn't what?
That he did not get impeached.
Okay.
That instead of the last election, instead of getting 75 million votes, he got the 85 million votes, and Joe Biden got the 75 million, which means that the country has now moved in the direction of Donald Trump. And so we've seen what kind of laws and behavior that the Trumpites, I don't care for that term, but it's just there to identify something and make it easy to talk about. So all of these things start to come about. So the water starts to turn bad. The water, we start losing our monuments, our land monuments. We started doing more drilling on federal lands, which causes more leaks, and the land starts to become more unusable. And because they're in the majority, there's no way to stop that. So if there's not a filibuster, if there's not some way to gum it up, then we start to slide down insanity and destruction at a pace that can't be stopped. So the filibuster does offer an opportunity to at least gum up something that can be destructive, but it also can gum up a working government. And what I think we have to decide as a country, as a democracy, is it beneficial to allow those tweaks, to allow those little bit of, and I'm a programmer and I'm going to use a little bit of technical jargon, but we're going to allow a little bit of that code to control the whole system. See, our original government was designed on the premise that good people will always rise to the top, that we will always seek to expel bad and horrible from our midst. What recently occurred was that a reality check that maybe that isn't the case. And so what do we do? What is the remedy if that use case becomes reality? So the next dictator is a dictator. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, the challenge is you have a risk reward situation. And now the bad actors aren't necessarily being punished for it. We got Donald Trump sitting there. And because he has enough bad actors in the government, they're not going to let him be impeached. They're not going to let him pay the penalty of what he did. January the 6th showed what will happen when you sell people a bunch of lies. And we had a bunch of people go to the Capitol and insurrect an armed rebellion against the country. They went in there, they beat police officers. 3 police officers are dead now as a result of that Capitol. 4 other people died. You know, what are you going to do? The Republicans are not going to let anything happen. They're not going to let it happen. And you got a crazy woman now running around saying, yeah, let's take Democrats and shoot them. Before we talked and we worked out our differences, we didn't use filibusters to just gum up the works, as you say. We sat down, we compromised, and we dealt with people. We put a bill in it with some for everybody. The left side didn't get everything they wanted. The right side didn't get everything they wanted. But that was the way you do it. Now, especially with the incoming of Barack Obama as president, the right decided compromise is a dirty word. Working with the other side is a dirty word.
Well, hasn't that always been? Hasn't that always been the case from one side to the other?
No, I think compromise prior to during the Clinton presidency, there was some compromise. There was some compromise. I mean, well, it became more strained. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there was some, but I'm just saying historically we have always had strike opposition or opposing points of view on things, and sometimes compromise just wasn't in the cards. You know, we end up having demonstrations and riots. So compromise.
But a lot of times the government officials got together and did some compromise. They got together and got stuff worked out. And yeah, you still got, because that's one of the things of our Constitution, when you look at it, is we're allowed to peaceful assembly for the redress of grievances. Okay, and just look at the 2 ways you grieve. Last summer, when the Black Lives Matter was holding their grievances, they had to go through stacks and stacks of paperwork and all the extra stuff. And then when they were marching down DC, there was a bunch of police officers in military gear with automatic weapons, and had something like January the 6th happen, they'd have been gunned down. And when you look at the films and the video from January the 6th, where was that at? And these people broke into the Capitol. They bashed doors, bashed windows, got in there, looking for people to kill and saying they should have killed them and whatever. The two women that went for looking for Pelosi said we just shot in the head that we did our thing, but we did our part.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that kind of thing. Now, a lot of these people starting to claim it was mental illness that made them do it. They were being mentally challenged.
Right.
And, you know, and these people were leaving DC and going home. And these federal judges in their home districts were letting them off and letting them off without bail. Go on your own recognizances. Anybody that was locked up in rebelling in an armed insurrection against the country, they should have first been brought to the court in DC, and then they should not be allowed to get out of jail on bail. They should be held without bail.
Well, why do you think they would let go?
My thing is, you look at the color of the skin of the people.
Hold on a second.
Now,
Hold on a second. Okay. I'm gonna ask Mr. Olson, were you able to hear the other two people? Were you able to hear them throughout this? At any point were they like muted and you couldn't hear them? You have a second, Mr. Jim Olson? Alrighty, so I don't know.
You might have been muted.
Yeah, you might have been muted, and I thought I unmuted it. I remember doing that, and I don't know why it seemed to pop off by itself. So, unfortunately, we will.
We need a moderator or a monitor.
Well, what we need is for me not to like lose focus, you know.
Well,
so anyway, so go ahead. Well, let me go back to your statement about that protests are a form of non-compromise, and that's, I don't think that that's the case. I think protests are just a way to say, hear me. I don't think you're hearing me.
Sure. I agree to that. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we're not compromising. The thing is that I want you to hear me. That's important because I don't feel like you are hearing me. So, as far as compromise goes, compromise doesn't always mean it goes smoothly. So I'm in the majority on, let's say, immigration. And you want to do immigration differently.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm in the majority, we do it the way I want to do it. Doesn't mean that it wasn't a compromise. You had an opportunity to voice your opinion. You had an opportunity to be heard. You had an opportunity to input. Because things didn't move in the direction you wanted them to move, doesn't mean that that wasn't a compromise. There are other issues in which you're going to be on the majority side, and you're going to get more of what you want than what somebody else is going to want. That's what compromise is. Compromise doesn't mean just because I have a point different than yours, that you move off of your point. Compromise can be, in this particular instance, you didn't get everything that you wanted. And so if we had a 50-50 voting situation, and one side wanted it this way and the other side wanted it that way, a different way, and then you meet somewhere in the middle, that's easily recognized as a compromise. That's an easy recognition of compromise.
Yeah, but if the outcome depended on the simple majority, what does the major party necessarily have to give up to win the decision?
Why should they? Why should the majority have to give up anything?
That's what I'm saying. So technically, is that a compromise when the majority got what they wanted and the other side may have got nothing?
Sure. You got heard. Just because you got heard, because you got heard, that is how democracy works. Movement of the needle is about convincing people to your side. The more people you convince to your side, the more likely you are to get something out of all of the negotiations. If
that's
60%,
that's in theory.
if 60,
well,
theory. So
that's in theory. It's not always a reality.
So that's where those little tweaks that we're talking about, the filibuster, the reconciliation, that's where those little tweaks interfere with the true function of democracy.
Well, just like what's happening now, for example, in the state of Arizona, one of their Republicans put a law on the floor, and they're trying to pass this law that says, well, even after we have a vote, if basically it's for Republicans, that if we don't like what the people voted, we can go up and we can change their vote. We can change their mind and say their vote don't count. Okay, and that's another one of these little tweaks, not necessarily designed to make the whole system work, but it's designed to give us the power to do what we want to do. Like one of the issues that Biden was running on was about voter rights and amending the voter rights. However, in a bunch of states like Wisconsin, like Arizona, the Republicans are trying to make sure they stay in power over and above democracy. We don't care what y'all voted for. We're going to do this anyway, just like in the state of Missouri. You can put an item up on a referendum, or you can put it on the ballot box, and you can vote on it, you can pass it, but Missouri really run by the conservatives. If they don't want it, by Missouri law, they can go just into Jefferson City when the legislature meet and pass the law to vote you down, to vote that down.
Okay, so let me ask this question then. So if the Republicans in Missouri, and we're going to take Missouri for an example, if the Republicans win the majority of statewide offices, okay, and then they go to Jeff City, which is the capital of Missouri, state capital, where they pass legislation. By the mere fact that they ran on a platform telling people what they wanted to accomplish, and the majority of people who voted for them, then don't they have the responsibility to act out what those people want?
Yeah.
If that's the case, then how can you say they're ramming something through?
I didn't say that they rammed it through. In Missouri's case, they did.
Okay.
That's just the way their law is. In Arizona, they trying to put that law in where they can ram through what they want, irrespective of the voters. They can ram through something opposite. Just like the filibuster is allowing the Republicans in the Senate to block up what they don't want, no matter how many people in the country want it. They can stop it, and they can hold it up. Even if 75% of the people want a particular thing, they got this filibuster that says, yeah, we don't care what 75% of our people want. We're gonna ram through our way.
Right, and that's
what
we were talking about. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Right, and it's giving the minority the choice to determine, with that way, they can determine what doesn't get done at all. And, you know, as you say, you gum up the works. Never has gumming up the works been considered positive, at least in my years of hearing it. Gumming up the works means you got it stuck, you grind it to a halt, and you do it.
Okay.
Now,
we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
I know you care about the environment, and maybe you want to learn more about sustainability and climate action. Then join me on the Climate Conscious podcast, where my guests and I discuss the issues of sustainability related to the Caribbean and beyond. Together, we'll explore practical solutions for managing our impact on the planet. Tune in every other Wednesday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And follow me on Instagram at The Climate Conscious.
Welcome to the So-Called Oreos podcast,
a podcast where Kia, Amari,
Rachel,
and Janae discuss all the awkwardness, hardship, and hilarity that comes along with society labeling you white on the inside and black on the outside, also known as an Oreo.
Trying to mind my business and be black, that's basically about it.
Through intimate conversation and candid interviews, we discuss everything from quote-unquote talking white.
You talk the way, which I guess is supposed to be like you talk proper, and I usually think black people sound ghetto and uneducated. That's how I perceive when you say you talk so white.
What, you mean you don't speak Ebonics? Traveling while black. It opened my eyes to a lot of just the small privileges Americans have, and then it also opened my eyes to, as a person of color, how difficult it may be to go to another country. It was just a lot of blatant racism. Dating as a black woman.
There's just something about the black woman who just really wants to support and see the black man thrive. And even if I'm not in a relationship with a black man, I'm still like
gonna root for them.
I'm still rooting
I'm always
for
gonna root for
them.
you.
I'm always.
And a whole lot more.
I just love being black.
So join us every other Tuesday for intellectual and funny conversations that will make you embrace your inner Oreo.
I'm gonna light your shit on fire.
I'm gonna tell your mama. What's up?
What if
Roberta, yo, son cheated on me.
But you know, some mama be like, well, that's what men do, so why you surprised?
Exactly.
No.
Old-timey bullshit. I ain't having
that's
it.
That's not okay.
Experience Altitude Adjustment, a weekly podcast about people, politics, and professions. It's built around user interaction, so join the conversation by visiting the Lion's Den, stl.wixsite.com/home.
all right.
And I made sure the microphones were on, so we will have to, I will have to go and check the video once this is done and see how bad if I'm the only voice that's being heard. And I apologize, guys. So we are putting into place a mechanism to make sure that in the future this doesn't become an issue, and I don't have to be smacking my forehead, do a face plant because I didn't get the audio on correctly. So if you notice in that break, there's a new podcast in there, and I try to reach out to other podcasters because I think in this time there are a lot of people doing podcasts. The number of podcasts has grown exponentially, and I listen to a good 4 or 5 hours of podcasts a month. I think there's a great source of information, and I always try to reach out to ones that I think are really interesting and that we can bring on. And this group of young ladies I thought was very impressive. Hopefully we can get them to come on and talk with us about their podcast and their ideas. So I'm going to take a minute real quick to talk. We had a question about Candace Owens. And I've mentioned her once before. And Candace Owens, I disagree with her politics. I disagree with her politics, and I have listened to her on many occasions having a dialogue with someone else, and she tends to will overtalk you, will interrupt you when she disagrees with you. Now, is that a good or a bad thing? I think it's a bad thing because I think it shows a lack of respect for other people's ideas. On this podcast, we try to respect each other. We try to listen to one another. And even when we want to get a point in, we try to wait to respectfully join the conversation. Apart from that, I don't know her specifically that well, other than what the video's saying. I'm guessing she's her issues are very heartfelt, and she sticks to those. But again, I think many of the people that I have seen who talk about politics usually talk from a position of emotional attachment to an idea, and they're not willing to be moved. One of the things that I try to do is, yes, I have developed ideas based on things that I have learned over the years, and I have formed an opinion, but I never make my opinion immovable. Because if I learn new information, if I learn something new, if something's different, and I learn something from you, I have to be willing to change, or I'm not better. I'm not getting better. I don't get the feel for a lot of the people that are in the public space right now that they take that same approach. And I'm not comfortable that she's taking that same approach. I don't know if one of you guys wanted to make some comments on that.
Well, I've never heard her do anything live, but I've just heard of things. I heard the things that was taped that she does, and I'm not impressed by her, number one. I mean, yeah, we disagree politically speaking, but I can't just pretend, just say, well, because I am who I am, and I just believe I just have a different opinion. I can't get behind people who make it their mission in life is to hurt other people. They call other people names and trash them down because they think different than you, which she does.
Yeah.
Like I've heard her say, like one of the people I like to listen to on YouTube or rebroadcast, Jesse Dollar. And he talks about her carrying the water for conservative politics. And what she don't realize is the conservatives don't need her to carry water for them. They got their own water carriers. Like you say, I believe she tries to talk over people that she disagree with. And like you said, when you're sitting here, you're exchanging ideas. You exchange information. You talk about your differences, but you don't try to drown anyone else out. Like there was a panel discussion she was part of, and it was the rapper T.I. Was on part of that panel discussion. She tried that with him, and he just wouldn't accept it. And and I think the way he went off on her was uncalled for. But he definitely stopped her and put her back in her place.
Yeah. I think Candace is a very, very intelligent woman. She's smart. I think she's a conservative, but I think she's also independent, and that she's basically her own brand. She's just trying to make a name for herself on her beliefs. And I think she sought support or endorsement from the Republicans, but I think eventually they kind of kicked her to the curb. Matter of fact, I think it was that same show where she was on stage with T.I. where she actually said she wasn't a Republican, I think she just seeks to connect with the Republicans because of her conservative views. I would like to see her do more as far as supporting or helping black folks, because she's got a mind, she's intelligent, she knows how to address issues in her own way. I think we could learn some things from her if she were more focused on helping black people, but I think that's not her plan. She's her own brand, I think. I noticed a lot of black people out there are doing the conservative pitch, and it seems like they like to go after this, what they call the so-called black liberals. This one guy, I can't think of his name right offhand, escapes my memory, but I've been listening. Oh, I think it's Larry Elder. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's on.
Sure.
Smart
I've heard
guy.
There's several black conservatives that, and they all sound the same. They seem to attack the black community.
Exactly.
They don't seem to show much respect for them, because either if you are believing in the Democratic Party, then there's something wrong with you. You're not using your brain. It's not that you could be that's your conviction. It's that you just don't understand, or you don't get it. I'm not trying to devalue these people. I just feel like they try to devalue black people who don't agree with them. And so that's, and maybe that's not, it's my perception. So
well, I have a similar perception. They try to make their bones with the conservatives by insulting and jumping all over and railing other black people. That's how they try to make their bones with conservatives. And if you are true in who you are and what you are, you don't need to put anybody else down.
You don't need to do that. I agree.
You don't have to.
All right, so we're down to 2 minutes left. Any last comments on reconciliation and filibuster?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because I didn't get a chance earlier, I think one of the big problems with this whole idea of resolution or resolving these votes or passing these bills is that with the two-party system we have, it's like, everything automatically becomes divided down the party line, and folks are going to stick to their guns whether they like it or not. They have to vote with their party. And I think if we had 3-4 party system, there would actually be more room for compromise with different thoughts and things, because there would be more voices. Right now, everything's left, right, Democrat, Republican, and you're forced to go with one side or the other. There's a lot of like these Republicans that speak out against Trump. Then when it comes down to vote, all of a sudden they turn right back around. Party. There's no independence in our politics whatsoever. Even when they appear to be independent, when it comes down to actually voting, they have to go party line. And I think that's the problem with the system.
All right, Nick, last comment, Leonard?
Yeah, I was looking at a thing on the internet this morning, and it was talking about, with the way this filibuster working, we got basically 11% of the country dictating what the other 89% are doing. With the Senate, everybody getting the equal number there, and you got 11% of the country, the minority, dictating what the whole country does. Or as it were, dictating what they won't do.
Okay, so you're done?
Yeah, I'm done.
So Earlier, I talked about a fact on the reconciliation. The reconciliation was used 5 times, 4 times under Obama, 1 time under Clinton, and it was done by the Republicans. So they've used it 5 times, and all against Democratic presidents. Democracy is difficult because it means being able to swallow something that you didn't want or that you didn't want completely. And that's a difficult thing to always be able to look at yourself and say, we did our best, we achieved our best when you didn't get everything that you wanted or things didn't go exactly the way you wanted. But that's democracy. It's messy and it's worth the fight because as long as your voice is being heard, you had an opportunity to participate and to influence, you just weren't able to convince the people to do what you wanted them to do. We do need to audit our democracy to determine if we are living up to democratic values. The filibuster and the reconciliation, I think, are way out of bounds in a democracy. I think a supermajority should never exist. And I think a simple majority is what a democracy is about. So we really have the opportunity to define our democracy the way we choose. And if we define it as 60 votes, then that'd be the case. And right now, I have to swallow that because I am not in the majority. I want to thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Hey guys, I put into place how you can help me make sure that the microphones are hot all the time. We'll be back next week, and we thank you very much.
That concludes this episode of Altitude Adjustment, and thank you for listening. This podcast is streamed live on YouTube and Twitch.tv and is designed for listener interaction. Visit the website, thelionsdenstl.wixsite.com/home to join the discussion. The audio version of Altitude Adjustment is available where you get your podcasts, including Stitcher.com, the iTunes Store, and the Google Play Music Store, to name a few. Remember that the internet is powered by your likes, shares, and comments. So please like, share, and comment on this and other episodes of Altitude Adjustment because it matters. And as always, look out for the other guy because they may not be looking out for you.